ما شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله قاسم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مرك الحاربين، والصلاة والسلام وتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي اسمه في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين المعصومين، سيما أولهم أمير المؤمنين وآخرهم بقية الله في الأرضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء. ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقتليهم وغاصب حقوقهم ومنكري فضائلهم ملعونين. Amma ba'd, for the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziya, for the enlightenment of the graves of your Marhumin, the graves of the Shahadat, Ulama and Siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahlulbayt around the world, and for the safety and the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullahi al-A'zam, Arwahuna al-Fida, please recite another salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is Rahman and the one who is Rahim. The one that has given us the opportunity to sit in the remembrance and the mourning of that household whose very aim was to take man towards their perfection, that perfection that can only be attained through the ma'rifah, through the understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no other path towards Allah except the path of Ahlulbayt. And today we commemorate the fifth prince that ascended the throne of Wilayat. That Imam that the Holy Prophet approaches Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari and he says to him, Jabir, know that Allah will bestow you with a long life, and that life will enable you to see my descendants. You will see my fifth descendant. His name will be my name. He will speak like me. He will walk like me. And his qunniyah, his title will be Al-Baqir. When you reach him, O Jabir, convey my salams to him. This is that Imam that Rasulullah himself is sending salams towards him. He is known as Al-Baqir. Baqir means the splitter of knowledge. When we look at the books of Lughat, the books of Arabic grammar where we look at the roots of certain words, when you look under the chapter of Al-Baqir or look under the word of Baqir, you find that the translation or the explanation that is given is it is the one who reveals knowledge. Knowledge that was unknown, he reveals it to the world. The root of Baqir is Baqara. When you look at Baqara and you understand what the root of Baqir is, you find in Lisan al-Arab, they say that Baqara, that individual or that entity that expands knowledge, recognizes the root of knowledge, establishes the roots and expands the branches of knowledge, that individual is Baqir. That individual is the one whom we remember today. because the political situation was such at the time that Banu Umayyah and Bani al-Abbas were fighting amongst themselves. So this gave the smallest of windows to Ahlulbayt to be able to reveal and tell the people about the true teachings of Islam. Whereas at that time the people had forgotten. They had gone down the line of the Umayyads, down a line where writing of hadith was banned, where seeking of new knowledge and questioning became a problem. And the life of the Imam can be broken down into a number of aspects, and I want to look at 2 or 3 of these aspects, inshallah, in the time that we have. The one is the worship of the Imam. The second is the political life of the Imam. And the third thing is the social life of the Imam. What lessons is it that we can take from this Imam? Tangible lessons. Because at the end of the day, hearing stories and reciting the musibah and crying over the musibah is one thing. But that's not what Ahlulbayt came for. They did not come so that me and you could sit and listen to their virtues and listen to their masa'ib, be happy at their virtues and just cry at their masa'ib. No, they came in order to guide us. They are all safinatun najah. They are all arcs of salvation. They're there to take us to a destination. A destination that is so complete, that is so perfect, that only man can reach that point. Even Sayyidul Malaika says that if I go beyond this point, my wings will burn off, I will perish. Only man can enter into those realms that are the absolute proximity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As was displayed by the Holy Prophet on the event of Mi'raj, that when they reach the edge and Jibreel says, I can't go any further. If I go any further, my wings will burn off, I will perish. So it is only man that can go forth. And then Rasulullah goes forth and he reaches the yoke tree. And there at the edge of existence, he stands and he converses with his Lord. And the hadith of Mi'raj for another day, inshallah. And it's a very beautiful hadith in regards to what is that place that Rasulullah goes to, what is meant by the edge of existence. What is that furthest point that we speak about? But inshallah, when we get an opportunity again, we can look at it. But for this majlis, we want to analyze those 3 aspects of the life of the Imam. If we look at the worship of the Imam, put aside the physical acts of worship, but the main aim of every single one of the Imams was to take us towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Ziyarat Jami'ah Kabira, those of you that have been to Mashhad, the ziyarat that is recommended to be recited at the grave of Imam al-Rada is Ziyarat Jami'ah Kabira. Within Ziyarat Jami'ah, we have certain lines where we explain the role of Ahlul Bayt, or we bear witness to the role of Ahlul Bayt. Within it you find the line, in ilallahi tad'un, it is through you that you are the ones that invite people towards Allah. وَبِهِ تُؤْمِنُونَ, and in Him is it you have faith. We acknowledge the absolute faith, the absolute iman that Ahlul Bayt have. The main aim and the main reason for the existence of the Imams was the servitude of Allah. And through that servitude, they guided each and every one of us. It is only servitude that will allow us to reach Allah, not the fact that we are maybe descendants of the Imam. This does not qualify us for salvation. Because you find in history people like Ibrahim ibn Musa, the brother of Imam al-Rada, who turns against his brother and tells the people that Imam al-Rada is not the Imam. and he tells everyone that Imam al-Kadhim has gone into Ghaiba and he is actually the Mahdi. You find people like Ja'far al-Kadhab who are denying the Imamate of the 12th Imam. You have various individuals like this. Proximity to the Imam does not necessarily mean salvation. When Amir al-Mu'mineen goes to visit Sa'sa ibn Sohan, one of the closest companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, when Sa'sa is ill, Amir al-Mu'mineen says to him, Sa'sa, do not be happy or do not become proud that Ali has come to visit you when you are ill. This does not mean that you are saved. Amir al-Mu'mineen is visiting him on his deathbed, while he is ill. And he's saying, but don't be happy. This doesn't mean that you're saved. Bazanti is visited by Imam al-Rada, and again the same words are uttered by Imam al-Rada to Bazanti. He says to him that don't be happy just because I have come to see you. It doesn't mean that you're saved. So then how is it that I live my life and just think that by saying Ya Ali, or just by saying by claiming that I love Ahlulbayt, or by just claiming that I'm a Shia, or by just wearing a sword around my neck, or tattooing a sword to my body, or hanging a sword in my rearview mirror, does it make me think that I will be saved? Salvation does not come. Wilayat is not accepted, or wilayat is not understood through these superficial actions. No, it is through my ibadat, through my akhlaq, through the way that I interact with other people, that I am able to understand what wilayat is. Wilayat is not gained through my name. Wilayat is not gained through my lineage. Wilayat is not gained through the family that I am brought up in. Wilayat is not even gained by attending the masjid. Wilayat and the understanding of wilayat is far greater. It is far more deeper than the superficial actions that we attribute towards wilayat. And this is maybe one of those reasons that people will reject the Imam when he comes. When he brings that true wilayat, and the people will say, yeah, but we've never heard about this. What do you mean that we can't do this and we can't? But we've done this all our lives. Oh, I've spent my whole life forgetting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ignoring the boundaries of Islam, by saying, no, it's okay, when I get older, I'll repent, it's alright, and I'm happy about it. Yeah, I went out last week, I hit the town last week. Like we have no shame left within us. That we claim to be followers of Ahlulbayt, but yet we are frequenting those places that Yazid and such people would frequent, the places of alcohol, the places of music, the places of lahw and la'ib. And still we claim to be Shia. What a situation we have got ourselves into. That these actions of haram, we somehow manage to justify themselves because we have crushed that divine voice within us through constantly sinning, through constantly turning away. That divine voice that made us feel guilty initially when we committed the haram the first time, we have crushed it and suppressed it so much so that we no longer feel that pain. We no longer feel that guilt. And that is the worst place to be. That is the darkest place to be. When I commit a sin and I think about when I will do that sin again and I don't feel bad about it. That is the darkest place that I could ever dwell within my life. Ahlulbayt did everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And their anger was for the sake of Allah. They didn't become angry for the sake of themselves. It was a discussion I was having some weeks back with a friend of mine in regards to la'an and the concept of sending la'ana and these things. And he was arguing that no, the Imams would never do this and things and such things. You know, is there any doubt in our minds that if Amir al-Mu'mineen had recovered from that strike that he would have forgiven Ibn Muljim? No doubt. There's no doubt that had Amir al-Mu'mineen recovered, he would have forgiven Ibn Muljim. He would have. This is the way of Ahlul Bayt. They would have forgiven him. But where? And then even then, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, he struck me with one strike, you strike him with one strike. If you want to let him go. But if you want to take revenge upon him for my death, then hit him with one strike, because he only struck me with one strike. This is the mercy of Ahlul Bayt. But yet when it comes towards the religion, when it's their own person, they don't care. They're willing to forgive. But when it comes to the religion, and when people begin to attack Tawheed, this is where now the sword of Ali did not look who it was going for. Whenever someone stood in the way and attacked the religion and attacked Tawheed, then events like Nahrawan happened, where from thousands that fought against him in Nahrawan, he says himself in the khutbah of Nahj al-Balagha, that I went inside the mouth of the fitna and I ripped out the eye of the Khawarij. From thousands, only less than 10 survived. Because they were attacking the religion through their actions, through their words. When they attack the persons of the Imam, they don't care. But when Allah's religion is being attacked, and this is how we need to be. You find that Shaykh al-Tusi says there are 7 individuals that Imam al-Sadiq would say that my father would curse. He would send la'an upon them. People like Mughayrat ibn Sa'id, he would send la'an upon them after every salah. 7 individuals. And then he says the reason for why my father would send la'an upon them is because these are the individuals that stood in our way and tried to stop our tabligh. That we tried to guide the people, and they stood in the way, and they tried to misguide the people, and as a result my father would send la'an upon them. Not because of the oppression that they faced, not because of the punishment that they faced, not because of the poison that they faced, that they were forced to take. Even at that time when they're on their deathbeds, do you hear them ever cursing their killers? But when the religion is at stake, when Tawheed is being attacked, then they're there. They're ready to defend the religion. Because they are absolutely drowned in the love of Allah. You find that one of the companions of the 5th Imam says that I went with him towards the Kaaba. His name was Aflah. He says, I went with the Imam towards the Kaaba. فَلَمَّا نَظَرَ إِلَى الْبَيْتِ فَبَكَى وَصَوْتُهُ. He says, the moment that his eyes fell upon the house, he began wailing and wailing loudly. Aflah says, the people started looking at the Imam. And he says, I turned to the Imam and I said to the Imam, this Sayyidi Mawlai, inna nas yanzaruna ilayk. This is my master. All the people, they're staring at you. They're staring at you, crying so loudly. It's a bit embarrassing, you know how we say it in our terms. Everyone's looking at you. So he says the same thing to the Imam. Look, everyone's looking at you. You're crying really loudly. And the Imam says to him, Ya Aflah, wayhak, lima la abki. Says, woe unto you, why should I not cry? لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى يَنْظُرُ إِلَيَّ بِرَحْمَةٍ فَأَفُوزُ عِنْدَهُ. He says that, how can I not cry when I see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at us? How can I not be worried when I realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there? And He's seeing every single one of our actions. And then Aflah says that the Imam fell into sajda and began wailing and crying. And when he raised his head, his whole beard was covered in his tears. If only we could attain that level of understanding. If only one tear could fall when we think about our sins. When we think about how insignificant we are in front of Allah. If only one tear could fall. The problem is that we have become so drowned in sin that we find it so difficult to cry. We have become so drowned in sin that we find it difficult to shed a tear for our sins that we have done. When Dua Kumail is being recited, I can read the translation, but yet nothing comes out of my eye. Not even a drop. And sometimes this is the will of Allah. When He sees that a slave has turned against Him, constantly forgetting Him, then He removes any way of salvation for him. Because the narrations state, one tear that falls, that individual's dua is accepted. One of the signs of the acceptance of dua is that tears will fall from the eyes of that individual. A sign of the acceptance of his istighfar is that tears will fall from his eyes, because those tears are a sign that the sins have been forgotten. This is why also in regards to the Shahadat and the Masa'ib of Abi Abdullah, it says that crying over Imam al-Hussein, يُحُطُّ الذُّنُوبَ الْعِذَامِ, it consumes the sins like fire consumes dry wood. Just tears for Abi Abdullah. But sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away that opportunity, because that abd has forgotten Him so much, has chosen to ignore Him so much, that now Allah doesn't give him the opportunity to return back to Him. سيدي لعلك عن بابك تردتني وعن خدمتك ناحيتني. My Lord, maybe it is because you have dispelled, you have removed me from your service, and you have turned me away from your door. In Dua Abu Hamza Thumali, this is what we recite. أو لعلك في مجالس العلماء. Maybe it is because you didn't find me fond of the gathering of the scholars, so then you have turned me away. أو لعلك في مجالس البطالين فبيني وبينهم خليتني. Maybe it is because you found me fond of the gatherings of the wrongdoers, so thus you have left me to them. أو لعلك في مكام الكاذبين. Maybe it is because you found me amongst the liars. You found me lying, thus you have left me and have made me despair of your mercy. 14 reasons Imam lists in that dua as to why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would turn away. That tear, the Imam is in sajda, he's crying, he raises his head. Aflah says his whole beard and face was covered in tears. The Imam said to him, that woe unto you, you're worried about the people. You're worried about what the people will say. Allah is looking at us. You're worried about whether the people will accept you, but yet all that matters is whether Allah accepts you or not. Another one of the companions of the sixth Imam Zari' comes to him, he says, Imam, my children, they laugh at me. They make jokes about me because I hold the majlis of Abi Abdullah every year. I hold the majlis and the azaa of Imam Al-Hussein. And my children, they laugh at me. They say, why do you do this? This is old traditions. And we need to think of new ways, like people say nowadays as well. We need to think of new ways. We need to, maybe change this matam, this marthia and all of this. We need to have a different way of doing things. They're the same people, they were saying the same thing to the followers of the Imam. His own children now, same thing. He comes to the Imam, he says, what do I do? The Imam says to him, Ya Zari' da'an nas. Forget the people. Come with us. Focus on what we tell you. Ignore what the people say. We're so worried about what people will think about us. We're so worried about what others will think about us that we lead ourselves towards that path of damnation. No, I can't wear hijab because of work and they're all going to think, bad of me. Or I can't grow this beard because people might say something about me. Or I can't ask for a place to pray in my workplace because they might think I'm an extremist. Forget what the people say. This is what the Imams are saying. That you forget the people, focus on what Allah wants from you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up the paths. If you desire the love of the people, many a times we do things so that we fit in with everyone, so that the people like us. But yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran doesn't say, oh, you who believe, do what the people want and Allah will place their love in your hearts. He doesn't turn around and say, oh, you who believe, if the crowd goes one way, then follow that crowd, because generally everyone who goes towards one way, they're pretty much the right people. No, instead he says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, or inna alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat sayaj'alu lahum ar-rahmanu wadda. He says, those who believe and do good actions, Allah will place their love in the hearts of the people. The people will fall in love with them. The people will become attracted to them because that individual has fallen in love with Allah. And so now all those around him will fall in love with him because he is in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The moment you go to try and please the people, you can never please them. And you'll never please all of them. And in order to illustrate this point, Luqman Hakim, he takes his son. He says, and you see in the Holy Quran, there's various advices that Luqman gives to his son. He says, Bunayya, la tushrik billah. My son, don't do shirk. Don't associate a partner towards Allah. Inna shirka la dhulmun azim. Surely that shirk is the greatest of oppression. So in one of the conversations between Luqman and his son, Luqman says to him, Bunay, let's take a donkey and the two of us will walk from area to area. So it's okay. So Luqman says, I'll sit on the donkey and you pull it. No problem. So Hazrat Luqman, he sits on the donkey and they take it to the first village. They're walking through. The people of the first village say, look at this oppressive father. He's sitting on the donkey and his son, the poor thing, he's having to walk alongside. So Luqman says, did you hear what they said? He says, yes. He says, okay, so you sit on and I'll walk. So they go to the next village. They reach the next village and the people of the next village say, look at this son, how rude he is. The father is walking and he is riding upon the donkey. So Luqman says to his son, you heard what they said? He says, yes. He says, okay, let's both sit on the donkey. So they both sit on the donkey, go to the third village. As they're riding through the village, the people of the village say, look how oppressive these both are. that both of them sit on this donkey. The poor donkey is buckling under the weight of them two. So Luqman says, did you hear what they said? He said, yes. So both of us will come off the donkey. So they both come off the donkey. And they walk through the fourth village. Neither of them sitting on the donkey. And the people of the fourth village start laughing at them. Look at these fools. Both of them walking. They have a perfect ride here. And they're not riding it. They're walking alongside with the donkey. Luqman turns to his son and says, Bunay, you see how it is impossible to please the people. And this is the reality. The people are exactly like this. No matter what you do for them, there will be someone somewhere that will find an error within you. There is someone somewhere that will find some sort of flaw within you. So the focus should be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it often happens, we do it to appease our pride at times. There's sometimes, even in sort of our positions where we're giving lectures and we're in front of the people, and we don't know whether people are receptive of what we're saying, or we just want to feel good about ourselves. So afterwards, what do you think? How was it? I know full well it was a good lecture. I prepared well for it. But how do you think? Because I just want to hear from the people. Then everything that I gained in that lecture is gone. Because I gained the happiness of the people. I gained what the people wanted. I gave the people what they wanted. They wanted me to say something like this. They didn't want me to mention the issue of drugs, or they didn't want me to mention the issue of alcohol. They didn't want me to mention how our Shi'as, claiming to be Shi'as, are entering into clubs and pubs. And so then I don't mention them, and then people say, oh, great lecture. But everything was for the sake of the people. My reward is with the people. Allah says that. Says the one that does anything for the people, his reward is from the people. That's it. That wawa, that subhanallah, that great lecture that I get, that's it. That's it. There's nothing else. That grave is as dark as it will ever be. But if I do it for the sake of Allah, then not only do I get the acceptance of the people at times, but more importantly, you get the acceptance of Allah and an illumination of that grave. That point where I will be absolutely alone. When no one and nothing will come to my aid. In some of the anecdotes concerning Alexander the Great, they said that when they buried Alexander, he put in his will, place my hand outside the grave and bury it around, so my hand's outside. And I said, why? He says, so that the people can understand that I conquered half of the world, but yet took nothing with me. The hands of Alexander are empty. I conquered half the world, but nothing. And that is our reality. We take nothing back. We take nothing with us. All we take are our actions. And what we learn from the life of this Imam is don't care what the people say. Because if he had wanted to care what the people said, he'd stay quiet, don't do anything. Banu Umayyah and Bani al-Abbas, they're fighting amongst themselves. Probably not a good time to annoy either side of them. But they said no, they saw the opportunity. They went out for the sake of the people. They went out for the sake of Allah in order to guide the people. The Imams put themselves in harm's way, but they did not move from the path of truth. They did not move away from haqq. In fact, Imam Al-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, when he speaks about Imam Al-Baqir, and he speaks about how the Imam was, he says, Kana Abi Kathir al-Dhikr. He says, surely my father was one that would do a lot of dhikr, who would do a lot of tasbih, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لَقَدْ كُنْتُ أَمْشِي مَعَهُ وَإِنَّهُ لَيَذْكُرُ اللَّهِ. And when I would walk with him, anywhere we would go, we would travel, he would always be in the state of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَآكُلُوا مَعْهُ أَطْعَامٌ وَإِنَّهُ لَيَذْكُرُ اللَّهِ. And every time he would sit down to eat, he would always be in the state of the remembrance of Allah. When he would travel anywhere, he would be in the state of remembrance of Allah. Compare it to my travel or our travel. First thing, get the music CD ready. This is the music. This is the music for the journey. And then, what else to keep me entertained on the journey? No Quran, no dhikr. First and foremost, go towards haram. Go towards what shaitan wants from me. And that is the listening of music. So the first thing the fifth Imam would do is when he was traveling, he would recite the dhikr and the remembrance of Allah. But yet now I claim to be the Shia of the fifth Imam. I claim to be the Shia of Amirul Mu'mineen. But when I go out on a journey, the first thing I do is make sure I have my music selection ready. Second, when he would sit down to eat, he would be in a state of dhikr. She's mustahab. With every morsel of food to say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Not just at the start, but every time you put something in your mouth as you're about to eat it, you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Every single morsel. And then if that is not possible, then the recommendation is you say Bismillah min awwalihi ila al-akhir. I start in the name of Allah from the first morsel until the last. So I remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I sit down and forget Bismillah or anything, first thing, eat. And then I'll think about saying Bismillah. I'll forget. Or forget the dhikr of Allah, A bit of ghibah helps the food go down. It helps to digest the food. Especially over niyaz. You see, often people will sit down at the time for niyaz and they'll start speaking about others. So look at him walking around like he owns the center. Look at him, look, he just can't leave the mic alone, can he? Yeah? Did you hear what he was talking about? What a load of rubbish. How does he expect us not to listen to music, for example? The little bit of ghibah, backbiting helps, the food digest. And if it doesn't happen, then, something's missing. But yet the fifth Imam was the one that when he would start to eat, he would constantly be reciting the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He would be in the remembrance of the Imam. وَيُحَدِّثُ الْقَوْمَ. And when he would talk to the people, وَمَا يَشْغَلُهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. He would still be in a state of the remembrance of the people. When he would narrate things to the people, when he would speak to the people, he would still be in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was never a moment that he wasn't. And when we speak, how do we speak? Swear. We can't say a sentence without swearing. Excessive laughing, excessive joking, swearing. Nowhere in it is there the dhikr of Allah, the remembrance of Allah. And it doesn't have to be that you're constantly going, Subhanallah, how are you? Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. That is good if it's there at the back of your mind. No, just the way that you speak. With respect to the person that you are speaking to. Speak with the best of words. Speak in the nicest of ways. Be full of manners when you speak to a person. That itself is the dhikr of Allah, because you are conscious of the fact that Allah wants you to speak like this with with that individual or with the people in front of you. Then the hadith continues. He says, وَكَانَ يَجْمَعُنَا وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالذِّكْرِ. He says at the time of Fajr, he would gather us all. He would wake us all up. And he would gather us and tell us, وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالذِّكْرِ. He would order us to do dhikr. The sixth Imam is saying about the fifth Imam. He'd wake all the children, everyone up. He'd say, it's the time for Fajr, wake up. كَانَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْكِرَاعَ وَيَقْرَعُ. He says, and he would tell us to recite Quran, and he would recite himself as well. It's not just we tell our children or we tell our younger brothers and sisters, pray Quran, you have to go and learn Quran. But yet, no idea how to pray myself. Been years since I opened the Quran. Been years since I did some tasbih, meaningful tasbih. But yet we want everyone else, our younger brothers and sisters or our children, to go and recite Quran, learn how to recite Quran, make sure your Quran is better than Fulan. But yet mom and dad can't even recite Quran. Mom and dad have never been seen reciting Quran. And when it gets to the unfortunate case that big brother or mom and dad have to recite Quran, it's extremely embarrassing. Because there's this huge gap. Now there is no pronunciation, there is no makhrij or anything of the sort. Because of the gap. Because of the lack. But the Imam here says no. He says, my father, he would tell us to recite Quran, and he would recite Quran himself. حَتَّى تَطْلَعُ الشَّمْسِ. Until the rising of the sun. Until sunrise. See, this time that is known as Bain al-Tula'in, from Fajr until the rise of the sun, this is makruh to sleep in. From the start of Fajr until sunrise, that period extremely makruh to sleep in, because it is at that time that the angels of mercy descend. It is that time that the rizq for the day is written. And so sometimes the angels come and they're like, hey, nobody home, he's still asleep. So they go back. They come every morning bearing their blessings from Allah, but we choose to ignore them. حَتَّى تَطْلَعُ الشَّمْسِ. The worship of the Imam. We won't go into the political aspects of the Imam because we don't have the time. One short narration that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz comes to visit the fifth Imam. Now Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he was the better of the Abbasis. He was, he stopped the cursing of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He is the one that, turned people towards Ahlulbayt somewhat. But he was still one that took the right of Ahlulbayt. He didn't give up his throne or anything like that. But in one of his visits to Medina, he comes to visit the fifth Imam. And the Imam says to him, he says, "Oh Umar, know that this world is a marketplace. See whether you are profiting or losing." And he says, also Umar, be wary. ثَلَاثٌ مَنْ كُنَّ فِيهِ فَقَدْ اسْتَكْمَلَ الْإِيمَانِ. He says three things that are, if they are present within an individual, that individual's faith is complete. So the narration says that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he got up onto his knees. He sat straight in front of the knees. He ordered that pen and paper be brought for him, and he began writing as the Imam began speaking. So the Imam says three things that will cause you to have the completion of your faith. Imam says, first thing, من إذا رضي لم يدخل رضاؤه بالباطل في الباطل. When he is happy, when an individual is happy or she is happy, that happiness does not take them towards haram. I'm getting married, so I'll play music. Happy? Haram. It's Eid, so I'll play music. He's happy because it's Eid. He's doing haram. You see, the Imam is saying that Iman will not be completed when a person who is happy and in his happiness he goes towards haram. In our happiness, what is it that we do? We're so happy the night before Eid, we stay up the whole night, it's Eid, or the next day is, I don't know, I've passed my exams and tomorrow is going to be the day I'll get my certificate, I'm so happy. He's so happy. But the next day he doesn't wake up for Fajr, haram. He's so happy he's graduated, or she's graduated. So now, oh yeah, they're all my classmates, have a photo with the mahram with my hand around them. Haram, happy, haram. That's what we do. The second thing that the Imam says, من إذا غضب لم يخرج غضبه من الحق. He says, and when he is angry, his anger does not take him away from truth. His anger, he does not do dhulm upon a person when he is angry. He's angry, he doesn't necessarily start going smashing dishes, kicking holes in doors and hurting people. His anger is controlled. When an individual can control their anger, they're 2/3 of the way towards the completion of Iman. And the final thing that the Imam says, من إذا قدر لم يتناول ما ليس له. And when an individual has power and authority, he does not take from that thing which does not belong to him. He does not take through force that which is not his. Imam says this, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz orders some more paper and pen. And he begins writing the return of Fadak to Ahlulbayt. This is one of the times that Fadak was returned to Ahlulbayt. It's about 14 times. Fadak was taken and given back, and taken and given back. Then it was sectioned off and given back in sections, and then certain sections were lost. But there are about 14 different incidences in history where Fadak was returned to Ahlulbayt. Then the next person that came went, actually, no, we want it back. And they would again usurp the right of Ahlulbayt. This is one of those incidences where Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he understood. He understood what the Imam was saying to him. He didn't give up his khilafat, but he understood that much. And lucky are those who understand. Lucky are those that hear the words and they understand. And unfortunate is that individual that hears the words of truth but chooses to ignore them and chooses still to live a life of haram. The Imam has taught us that all that matters is simply the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing else matters in this world. And if you gain the happiness of Allah, He will give you both the dunya and the akhirah. But if you chase the dunya, it will never come into your hands. Because the dunya, its example is like that of a shadow. No matter how much you try and catch it, you can't. But you go for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will give you both the dunya and the akhirah. He will give you what you desire in this world, and He will give you what you want for the akhirah as well. That is one of the main messages we take from the life of the Imam. Do it for the sake of Allah, and your name will live forever. do it for the sake of the people, and you will be forgotten and cursed, like those previous that did it for the dunya. And until now, some have been forgotten, some have been kept alive, their names have been kept alive as an ibrah, as a lesson for those that come after, and as a point for those believers to send curses upon. It's what the Imam is teaching us. Everything for the sake of Allah. And this is truly the way of Ahlulbayt, that they did everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those that were in love with the dunya were unable to see this. And they oppressed them in ways that were more horrendous, that an individual cannot bear to think about it. When I was thinking earlier about the masa'ib of Imam Al-Baqir, I thought that this is that Imam who from a young age saw oppression. From the time that Karbala occurred, he was only 3 or 4 years old. At that point, at 3 or 4 years old, he sees his grandfather laying on the plains of Karbala. الشمر جالس على صدره, and Shimr is upon the chest of Abi Abdullah. He sees after the death of Imam al-Hussein, the burning of the tents of the women folk of Ahlulbayt. He sees the women running from one tent to another. He sees the children being scattered upon the earth, and each and every one of them being chased down by one of the army of Yazid. He sees after the death of Imam al-Hussein, all of the women being tied up in a rope. He sees his father chained up. He sees Sukaina being slapped over and over. He sees those children that fell from the camels, crushed under the hooves of the camels. He sees that time when the head of Abi Abdullah stops and the whips begin to fall upon Imam al-Sajjad, saying to him, "Tell us why the head of your father has stopped." Imam Al-Baqir will have remembered that time, that oppression at such a young age, that he would say to his father on the way to Kufa and on the way to Sham, that, "Oh father, do not stand up because the rope that connects us is too short. Every time you stand, the rope strangles me." He remembers that time that when Imam al-Sajjad was on his deathbed and Imam al-Baqir came and he placed his head on the chest of Imam al-Sajjad. Imam al-Sajjad began wailing loudly. Imam al-Baqir says, "My father, did I hurt you in any way?" He says, "No, my son, but today you are on my chest. But my mind goes back to Karbala, where on that day Shimr was on the chest of my father, taking each and every one of these sorrows." Imam al-Baqir carried on his life. When Hisham ibn Abdul Malik had had enough, he sent a poisoned saddle towards the Imam. The Imam sat on the saddle, the poison entered his body. As the poison coursed through the body and it started taking his effect, he called Imam as-Sadiq. He gave him his will. He said, "My son, give me kafan with me, bury me in my aba. Also bury me with the shirts that I used to wear. My son, bury me next to my father and my grandfather in Baqir." Oh Imam, when you left this world, at least you had the opportunity to gather your near ones next to you. At least they had the opportunity to mourn for you. But your grandfather Abi Abdullah in Karbala, now no one has the opportunity to mourn for him. The women go towards the body of Imam al-Hussein. Zainab runs towards the body of her brother, but she's constantly running back, trying to save her women folk. She is trying to put out the fire. When she finally reaches the body of her brother, there is no body to be seen. They say she begins moving away the stones and the spears that surrounded the body of Imam al-Hussein. She addresses it, Ha anta akhi, ha anta qurratu ayni. Are you my brother? Are you the apple of my eyes? She turns towards Medina. Ya Jadda salla alayka malaikatu as-sama wa hadha Husaynuka murammalun bid-dima muqatta'u al-ahdha maslubu al-amamati wal-rida wa banatuka as-sabaya. She says, my grandfather, the malaika of the heavens would send their salams upon you, but here lies your son Hussein covered in his own blood, his body cut to pieces, his amama and clothing stolen from his body, and now your women folk are being taken prisoner. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive the sins of our parents. Oh Allah, those of our parents that are alive, give them long lives. Those of our parents that have left this world, give them a place next to Ali Muhammad in Jannah. Oh Allah, those who are ill, give them shifa'ah. Those who are in debt, clear their debts. Those who are in education, make them successful. Ya Allah, keep our faith true and allow us to walk upon the path of Ali Muhammad until the day we die. Ya Allah, keep safe the Shia of Ali Muhammad around the world. Destroy the enemies of Tashayyu around the world. Oh Allah, keep our ulama and our maraja at the head of our institutions and give them long lives. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time and allow us to be amongst his true muntadhirin, his true awaiters, for the acceptance of these du'as and any of the du'as that the brothers and sisters have brought to the majlis. Please recite 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad